Remember between 1988 and 2015 where you could just sit there and just watch a game annual trade event and we could just see an announcement of a Metal Gear game? You could be thinking you're watching a trailer for the next Call of Duty and like a snake in a boot, a snake could pop out and make you act like... Then the dark days happened. For about 8 years we could only get excited for God of War, Mario and something called Red Dead Redemption. For a long time we waited through the silent ones that reluctantly play Assassin's Creed, crying every time we see the Assassin's Blade nerfed. We all saw the death of stealth games, Splinter Cell died, Hitman kinda got put into a rinse and repeat kind of world and changed how stealth games kind of worked, so it was kind of a stealth game but more of a sandbox game. Side note, I actually like Hitman. This new Metal Gear Solid remake doesn't just feel like the return to metal, it could also return of stealth games, but can Konami do it? Let's mumble about it, starting with, can we really talk about the upcoming game without talking about the designer of the whole franchise? The true reason why we haven't saw a game for like 10 years. Whoever says about the game that released 7 years ago, I will find you and I will feed you to a croc. I'm alive! Maybe the biggest reason to be worried about this game is the guy behind it. He isn't there at the helm, guiding the history of the game into the reboot. It's like making a shepherd's pie without mashed potato. It's still nice, some good elements, but is it still shepherd's pie? Or is it just some mince, peas, and some carrots?
Oh my god, she made half an English trifle and half a shepherd's pie.
Wait, what was I talking about? They had the foundation there from the previous games. This isn't like Silent Hill 2 where you can kind of just replace the creator. Konami is making this themselves in-house. Even though when you look past the pond onto new shores of another studio like Capcom, there is a game you can compare this to the original. This being Resident Evil 4 with its original and remake. That remake blew my fragile little mind. I only really played and finished Resident Evil 4, the original one, only a couple of months before, and it kind of made me worried about what was going to happen for the next remake of Resident Evil 4. After playing Resident Evil 2 and 3, what kind of raised the bar, it was still worrying, making me very worried about what they're going to do for this one, as currently there aren't many remakes on the level of Resident Evil 4's remake. Resident Evil 4 remake though excelled in elements that thought they were near perfect already, but still made you kind of feel like you were playing a completely different game. And you know why this happened? Because of this guy. Shinji Mikami, the director of the original Resident Evil 4, was part of the remake. This making so much sense of why this remake is so good. Explains why the game still had that soul from the original. Metal Gear Solid 3, however, has, I don't want to say lost its soul, but if the soul was the director of the video game, it definitely has lost that. Even though there are some parts of the development team still behind Metal Gear Solid 3, Delta is still there. I think the director of the cutscenes is still around, so I does still feel like it has its kind of ghost inside of the Metal Gear Foundation, I suppose.
The sun and the whole...
But that proper soul is lost, and it really feels like something is missing in every sort of promo, trailer for anything for this kind of game. And we've also seen very little amounts of gameplay, and it really feels like I'm looking at all these different points of this game. This maybe is the biggest worry that spreads like a virus through other parts of the different elements added to it. Also, after just finishing Death Stranding 2 and giving up on that book if you watch my Death Stranding 2 review, it makes me feel like no one else could make a Death Stranding game. What kind of gets me even more worried about Metal Gear, especially thinking about the story. Taking Resident Evil 4 as an example here again, while looking at the story elements, the remake of Resident Evil improved the story parts, with changing characters development and the way things happen, giving the stronger personalities in a way leaning towards the Resident Evil looks like today, stepping further away from the wacky quick time events and adding completely different parts to the game, updating it for the modern audience and also the modern audience who plays the modernized games, something they can't do with Metal Gear. When you look back at Metal Gear Solid Snake Eater, there could be a couple of parts where you could update the story elements could work pretty well. One of them being the relationship between characters. An example here would easily be Naked Snake and the boss. Not much is really needed, but just that extra cutscene, even that maybe a little more element of the manipulation of the past scenes and something just a bit different. Something you feel like you're playing something different. Not just that, it could also improve that story just by adding subtle changes to the story, but also making the game feel like a retelling of the story. Without the original director of the game, that feels like this won't happen that much, mostly due to them being worried about changing too much, or really anything. They're going to be too worried about getting this perfect and kind of jump-starting this franchise back up rather than changing things to make it better and slightly improving it, so it's going to be near enough the same as the original. Even while doing my research for this, I watched back to back the trailers, the kind of ones that were inspired by the originals. Don't know why, but it feels like it's missing something, like it's trying too hard to be the same game. It's trying to catch that lightning in the bottle with a very small bottle, but say if Hideo Kojima was there, that bottle would be kind of huge and at least like Metal Gear sized bottle. Even when you look at the gameplay, the graphics are great, all the trailers, they look amazing, but still some of the animations look stiff, like it's missing some sort of upgrade. Okay, I'm not saying some of the boss fights are bad in the original Metal Gear 3, but yeah, they're not great. One of them being Ocelot versus Snake. Across that little gap thing in the road, that I can't remember what it's called, like the little gap thing, the little gap type boss, that boss when you're fighting across a gap. Anyway, this boss feels slightly clunky. Maybe it's animation, or maybe it's just kind of the setup of the whole boss in general felt a bit odd to me, and always has. The Metal Gear franchise has two of the maybe best boss fights in history. Check out the boss video about that. But for one of the first fights in this chronological history of this feud, it's underwhelming. I don't want to go back to Resident Evil 4 so much, but it's the biggest reference I have. It reminds me slightly of the Krazer fight in the original Resident Evil. There was no real setup and it felt really random, but in the remake it felt better. It still wasn't great, it still felt a bit random as he wasn't appeared until the end, but it felt less messy from the improvements they did in the remake. Even though I do hate how random it feels still. It would have been good for this fight with Ocelot, the first one, to kind of feel different, more evolved into the modern day, but looking at the trailer, it looks a near mirror image of the original. With the new updated graphics, what looks fantastic with the new cinematic cutscenes, and all that, what does excite me, the mix of new graphics and old animation looks like a literal copy and paste of the boss layout, and very similar to the original image, what could feel very weird while playing, and it could be an overlaying issue throughout the whole game, evolving into something pretty weird and kind of worrying. Giving a negative though to Hideo Kojima after kissing his tar-covered butt, his designing of boss battles recently in the whole Death Stranding series have been kinda trash. Even the biggest feud in Death Stranding kind of feels like an afterthought, but has been the conclusion for two games. When you have a game about transport, all the bosses are straight up shooty, punchy, punch, they start to become pretty boring. It's slightly harsh to say, but I don't think Hideo Kojima could really improve any of the boss fights in Metal Gear 3 if you kind of look at his current series of games. Well, the past two. So maybe it is Konami that could kind of think out the box. It's possible. And then finally, the final worry is kind of these weird little gotcha machines in the trailers and marketing and in the gameplay. That may be pushed two types of players, but one of them truly insults me. The last type of things that worries me and asks how they really telling this story is these weird tacked on modes, one of them being the Bomberman and the Monkey that really insults me personally, and the tack on 10 years ago feeling online mode. Let's start with the online mode, and it's not the worst out of the two. Okay, online modes have been in different Metal Gear games in the past. I know there was one in 5 because it was actually cool and original concept, and I think there was one in 4. Like everything around this game though, we haven't saw much gameplay, and the gameplay we have seen seems frustrating in this online mode. Over the last like 20 years, I don't really remember a versus online game where you use stealth and combat together, and like this 1 minute of gameplay has been shown, it seems like that. And there's no doubt this mode took a lot of time away from development of the main game, and it really, who was buying Metal Gear Solid for this kind of what looks to be a terrible online mode? It's not the kind of original Metal Gear Solid 5 mode when you took over the base and attacked the base, what I haven't really saw much of even today. This is just a general versus mode, and it feels pointless, and it never really works with stealth. In the year of 2025, I cannot remember one of these random online modes has ever been added something to the game, and you know this was a last minute kind of forced thing they had to develop. I bet my own left Joy-Con that it took time away from the development of the main game, and this is probably one of the biggest reasons why this game felt like it was released so later than originally thought, or rumoured really. Alongside that, even the mode in general looks kind of rushed. Also, we haven't really saw much of it, and it looks so bare bones, and for a mode like this, it does need some sort of, I don't know, it's just something, some sort of snake to the source. I don't know, it just feels very basic and pointless and a waste of time, therefore maybe affecting the actual quality of the game. This makes me worried that the whole game will kind of be half-baked as they put more focus into these other modes, and as Mama always said, something half-baked can give you food poisoning, but something overdone is at least eatable. Then lastly we have the monkey and the Bomberman. You don't want to get them confused as it could ruin your Sunday dinner. Alongside that, I'm not sure who really cares about this that much. I'm not sure there are many Bomberman fans out there. It makes sense though, they have the rights to it, so the same studio makes it. Why not? It could be marketing for a future Bomberman game. It's no harm, no foul I suppose. Even though it's affected development, so big foul I suppose. It doesn't overcomplicate, it doesn't look that overcomplicated to make. What does though grind my bananas and serve them over hot coals without telling me is Ape Escape. The fact that this is the thing we got after so long of waiting for an Ape Escape anything and it's just a tacked on little mode is insulting to a loyal fan. And if there's any Ape Escape loyal fans out there, give me a ooh ah in the comments. The fact that we will never get another one of these games, most likely even though they keep on showing it and teasing it and giving little bits of Ape Escape, is offensive. Okay, jokes aside, I was never really a Resident Evil jockey. I was a snake in a box type of guy, so it's making me worried about what they're going to do when they put in so much time into these terrible modes. Well, it might be good, but it seems like still a bad idea to put time into these modes, especially when you're seeing these cracks around the game already and also nothing at the same time. In summary, Metal Gear Solid Delta is definitely worried about. I'm not really looking at this passionately. Maybe if they took the Silent Hill 4, 2, 3, whatever they remade through and got an actual, like a really good studio who can make these type of games to develop it, you wouldn't be that worried. I'd be passionately waiting for this, but instead I'm kind of looking at the pre-order. Should I cancel this? As currently I'm looking at the old one they just ported to all consoles, just thinking should I just play that instead, as this is looking like a weird kind of remake. What looks good on paper and you're seeing these new graphics, but it could be a bit of a mess. So yeah, I'm definitely worried about this one. So what do you think? Comment below your thoughts, like and subscribe for future moments, and I will see you in the next mumble.